Sir Roger Gilbert Bannister CBE is an English former middle-distance athlete, physician and academic, who ran the first sub-4-minute mile. In the 1952 Olympics in Helsinki, Bannister set a British record in the 1,500 metres but finished fourth. This strengthened his resolve to be the first 4-minute miler. He achieved this feat on 6 May 1954 at Iffley Road track in Oxford, with Chataway and Brasher providing the pacing. When the announcer declared the time was 3, the cheers of the crowd drowned out Bannister's exact time, which was 3 minutes 59.4 seconds. Bannister's record lasted just 46 days. He had reached this record with minimal training while practicing as a junior doctor. Bannister went on to become a distinguished neurologist and Master of Pembroke College, Oxford, before retiring in 1993. When asked whether the 4-minute mile was his proudest achievement, he said he felt prouder of his contribution to academic medicine through research into the responses of the nervous system. Bannister is patron of the MSA Trust. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2011. Early life and education. Bannister was born in Harrow, England. He went to Vaughan Primary School in Harrow and continued his education at City of Bath Boys' School and University College School, London, followed by medical school at the University of Oxford and at St Mary's Hospital Medical School. Early running career. Bannister was inspired by miler Sydney Woodson's remarkable comeback in 1945, 8 years after setting the mile record and seeing it surpassed during the war years by the great Swedish runners Arne Andersson and Gunnar Hag. Woodson regained his old form and challenged Andersson over the distance in several races. Woodson lost to Andersson but set a British record of 4 minutes 4 seconds and 2 milliseconds in Gothenburg on the 9th of September. Like Woodson, Bannister would ultimately set a mile record, see it broken, and then set a new personal best slower than the new record. Bannister started his running career at Oxford in the autumn of 1946 at the age of 17. He had never worn running spikes previously or run on a track. His training was light, even compared to the standards of the day, but he showed promise in running a mile in 1947 in 4 minutes 24 seconds and 6 milliseconds on only 3 weekly half-hour training sessions. He was selected as an Olympic possible in 1948 but declined as he felt he was not ready to compete at that level. However, he was further inspired to become a great miler by watching the 1948 Olympics. He set his training goals on the 1952 Olympics in Helsinki. In 1949, he improved in the 880 yards to 1 minute 52 seconds and 7 milliseconds and won several mile races in 4:11. Then, after a period of 6 weeks with no training, he came in third at White City in 4 minutes 14 seconds and 2 milliseconds. The year 1950 saw more improvements as he finished a relatively slow 4:13 mile on the 1st of July with an impressive 57.5 last quarter. Then, he ran the AAA 880 in 1 minute 52 seconds and 1 millisecond, losing to Arthur Wint, and then ran 1 minute 50 seconds and 7 milliseconds for the 800 meters at the European Championships on the 26th of August, placing third. Chastened by this lack of success, Bannister started to train harder and more seriously. His increased attention to training paid quick dividends, as he won a mile race in 4 minutes 9 seconds and 9 milliseconds on the 30th of December. Then in 1951 at the Penn Relays, Bannister broke away from the pack with a 56.7 final lap, finishing in 4 minutes 8 seconds and 3 milliseconds. Then, in his biggest test to date, he won a mile race on the 14th of July in 4 minutes 7 seconds and 8 milliseconds at the AAA Championships at White City before 47,000 people. The time set a meet record and he defeated defending champion Bill Nankville in the process. Bannister suffered defeat, however, when Yugoslavia's Andrea Atenhajma, aware of Bannister's final lap kick, took a 1,500 meters race in Belgrade the 25th of August out at near record pace, forcing Bannister to close the gap by the bell lap. Atenhajma won in 3 minutes 47 seconds and 0 milliseconds, though Bannister set a personal best, finishing second in 3 minutes 48 seconds and 4 milliseconds. Bannister was no longer seen as invincible. His training was a very modern individualized mixture of interval training influenced by Franz Stampfl with elements of block periodization, fell running and anaerobic elements of training which were later perfected by Arthur Lydiard. 1952 Olympics. Bannister avoided racing after the 1951 season until late in the spring of 1952, saving his energy for Helsinki and the Olympics. He ran an 880 on the 28th of May in 1 minute 53 seconds and 0 milliseconds, then a 4 minutes 10 seconds and 6 milliseconds mile time trial on the 7th of June, proclaiming himself satisfied with the results. At the AAA Championships, he skipped the mile and won the 880 in 1 minute 51 seconds and 5 milliseconds. Then, 10 days before the Olympic final, he ran a 3/4 mile time trial in 2 minutes 52 seconds and 9 milliseconds, which gave him confidence that he was ready for the Olympics, as he considered the time to be the equivalent of a 4-minute mile. His confidence soon dissipated as it was announced there would be semi-finals for the 1,500 meters at the Olympics, and he knew that this favored runners who had much deeper training regimens than he did. When he ran his semi-final, Bannister finished 5th and thereby qualified for the final, but he felt blown and unhappy. The 1,500 meters final on the 26th of July would prove to be one of the more dramatic in Olympic history. The race was not decided until the final meters, Josie Barthol of Luxembourg prevailing in an Olympic record 3 minutes 45 seconds and 28 milliseconds, with the next 7 runners all under the old record. Bannister finished 4th out of the medals, but set a British record of 3 minutes 46 seconds and 30 milliseconds in the process. New goal. After his relative failure at the 1952 Olympics, Bannister spent 2 months deciding whether to give up running. He set himself on a new goal, to be the first man to run a mile in under 4 minutes. Accordingly, he intensified his training and did hard intervals. On the 2nd of May 1953, he made an attempt on the British record at Oxford. Paced by Chris Chataway, Bannister ran 4 minutes 3 seconds and 6 milliseconds, shattering Wooderson's 1945 standard. This race made me realize that the 4-minute mile was not out of reach, said Bannister. On the 27th of June, a mile race was inserted into the program of the Surrey Schools athletic meeting. Australian runner Don McMillan, 9th in the 1,500 meters at the 1952 Olympics, set a strong pace with 59.6 and 1 minute 59 seconds and 7 milliseconds for 2 laps. He gave up after 21 halves laps, but Chris Brasher took up the pace. Brasher had jogged the race, allowing Bannister to lap him so he could be a fresh pace setter. At 3/4 mile, Bannister was at 3 minutes 1 second and 8 milliseconds, the record, and first sub-4-minute mile in reach, but the effort fell short with a finish in 4 minutes 2 seconds and 0 milliseconds, a time bettered by only only Anderson and Hag. British officials would not allow this performance to stand as a British record, which Bannister felt in retrospect was a good decision. My feeling as I look back is one of great relief that I did not run a 4-minute mile under such artificial circumstances, he said. But other runners were making attempts at the 4-minute barrier and coming close as well. American Wes Santee ran 4 minutes 2 seconds and 4 milliseconds on the 5th of June, the fourth fastest mile ever. And at the end of the year, Australian John Landy ran 4 minutes 2 seconds and 0 milliseconds. Then early in 1954, Landy made some more attempts at the distance. On the 21st of January, he ran 4 minutes 2 seconds and 4 milliseconds in Melbourne, then 4 minutes 2 seconds and 6 milliseconds on the 23rd of February, and at the end of the Australian season on the 19th of April he ran 4 minutes 2 seconds and 6 milliseconds again. Bannister had been following Landy's attempts and was certain his Australian rival would succeed with each one, but knowing that Landy's season-closing attempt on the 19th of April would be his last until he travelled to Finland for another attempt, Bannister knew he had to make his attempt soon. Sub-4-minute mile. This historic event took place on the 6th of May 1954 during a meet between British AAA and Oxford University at Iffley Road track in Oxford. It was watched by about 3,000 spectators, with winds up to 25 miles per hour before the event. Bannister had said twice that he favoured not running. To conserve his energy and efforts to break the 4-minute barrier, he would try again at another meet. However, the winds dropped just before the race was scheduled to begin, and Bannister did run the pace setters from his major 1953 attempts. Future Commonwealth Games gold medalist Chris Chataway from the 2nd of May attempt and future Olympic Games gold medalist Chris Brasher from the 27 June attempt combined to provide pacing on this historic day. The race was broadcast live by BBC Radio and commented on by 1924 Olympic 100 metres champion Harold Abrahams, of Chariots of Fire fame. Bannister had begun his day at a hospital in London, where he sharpened his racing spikes and rubbed graphite on them so they would not pick up too much cinder ash. He took a mid-morning train from Paddington Station to Oxford, nervous about the rainy, windy conditions that afternoon. Being a dual meet format, there were 7 men entered in the mile: Alan Gordon, George Dole and Nigel Miller from Oxford University, and 4 British AAA runners: Bannister, his 2 pacemakers Brasher and Chataway, and Tom Houlat. Nigel Miller arrived as a spectator and he only realized that he was due to run when he read the program. Efforts to borrow a running kit failed and he could not take part, thus reducing the field to 6. The race went off as scheduled at 6 p.m. and Brasher and Bannister went immediately to the lead. Brasher, wearing no. 44, led both the first lap in 58 seconds and the half-mile in 1:58, with Bannister tucked in behind and Chataway astride behind Bannister. Chataway moved to the front after the second lap and maintained the pace with a 3:01 split at the bell. Chataway continued to lead around the front turn until Bannister began his finishing kick with about 275 yards to go, running the last lap in just under 59 seconds. The stadium announcer for the race was Norris McWhirter, who went on to co-publish and co-edit the Guinness Book of Records. He excited the crowd by delaying the announcement of the time. Bannister ran as long as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the result of Event 9, the 1 mile, first, number 41, R.G. Bannister, Amateur Athletic Association and formerly of Exeter and Merton Colleges, Oxford, with a time which is a new meeting and track record, and which, subject to ratification, will be a new English native British national all-comers European British Empire and world record. The time was 3 The roar of the crowd drowned out the rest of the announcement. Bannister's time was 3 minutes 59.4 seconds. They claimed that a 4-minute mile was once thought to be impossible by informed observers was and is a widely propagated myth created by sports writers and debunked by Bannister himself in his memoir, The 4-Minute Mile. The reason the myth took hold was that 4 minutes was a round number which was slightly better than the world record for 9 years. Longer than it probably otherwise would have been because of the effect of the Second World War in interrupting athletic progress in the combatant countries. The Swedish runners Gunnar Hag and Arne Andersson, in a series of head-to-head races in the period 1942 to 45, had already lowered the world mile record by 5 seconds to the pre-Bannister record. What is still impressive to knowledgeable track fans is that Bannister ran a 4-minute mile on very low mileage training by modern standards. Just 46 days later, on the 21st of June in Turku, Finland, Bannister's record was broken by his rival Landy with a time of 3 minutes 57.9s, which the IAAF ratified as 3 minutes 58.0s due to the rounding rules then in effect. On the 7th of August, at the 1954 British Empire and Commonwealth Games in Vancouver, B.C., Bannister, running for England, competed against Landy for the first time in a race billed as the Miracle Mile. They were the only two men in the world to have broken the 4-minute barrier, with Landy still holding the world record. Landy led for most of the race, building a lead of 10 yards in the third lap, but was overtaken on the last bend, and Bannister won in 3 minutes 58.8s, with Landy 0.8s behind in 3 minutes 59.6s. Bannister and Landy have both pointed out that the crucial moment of the race was that at the moment when Bannister decided to try to pass Landy, Landy looked over his left shoulder to gauge Bannister's position and Bannister burst past him on the right, never relinquishing the lead. A larger-than-life bronze sculpture of the two men at this moment was created by Vancouver sculptor Jack Harmon in 1967 from a photograph by Vancouver Sun photographer Charlie Warner and stood for many years at the entrance to Empire Stadium. After the stadium was demolished, the sculpture was moved a short distance away to the Hastings and Renfrew entrance of the Pacific National Exhibition Fairgrounds. Regarding this sculpture, Landy quipped, while Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt for looking back, I am probably the only one ever turned into bronze for looking back. Bannister went on that season to win the so-called metric mile, the 1,500 meters, at the European Championships in Bern on the 29th of August, with a championship record in a time of 3 minutes 43.8s. He then retired from athletics to concentrate on his work as a junior doctor and to pursue a career in neurology, Sports Council and knighthood. He later became the first chairman of the Sports Council and was knighted for this service in 1975. Under his aegis, central and local government funding of sports centers and other sports facilities was rapidly increased, and he also initiated the first testing for use of anabolic steroids in sport. Personal life. Bannister married the artist Moira Jacobson, daughter of the Swedish economist Per Jacobson, who served as managing director of the International Monetary Fund. Legacy. On the 50th anniversary of running the sub-4-minute mile, Bannister was interviewed by the BBC sports correspondent Rob Bonnet. At the conclusion of the interview, Bannister was asked whether he looked back on the sub-4-minute mile as the most important achievement of his life. Bannister replied to the effect that no, he rather saw his subsequent 40 years of practicing as a neurologist and some of the new procedures he introduced as being more significant. His major contribution in academic medicine was in the field of autonomic failure, an area of neurology focusing on illnesses carried characterized by certain automatic responses of the nervous system not occurring. For his efforts, Bannister was also made the inaugural recipient of the Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year award in 1955 and is one of the few non-Americans recognized by the American published magazine as such. In a UK poll conducted by Channel 4 in 2002, the British public voted Bannister's historic sub-4-minute mile as number 13 in the list of the 100 greatest sporting moments. Bannister is the subject of the ESPN film 4 Minutes. This film is a dramatization, its major departures from the factual record being the creation of a fictional character as Bannister's coach, who was actually Franz Stampfel, an Austrian, and secondly his meeting his wife, Moira Jacobsen, in the early 1950s when in fact they met in London only a few months before the Miracle Mile itself took place. The 50th anniversary of Bannister's achievement was marked by a commemorative British 50-pence coin. The reverse of the coin shows the legs of a runner and a stopwatch. Bannister, arguably the most famous record setter in the mile, is also the man who held the record for the shortest period of time, at least since the IAAF started to ratify records. In 1996, Pembroke College, University of Oxford named the Bannister Building to honour the achievements and memory of Sir Roger, a former master of the college. The building, an 18th-century townhouse in Brewer Street, was converted to provide accommodation for graduate students. It was extensively refurbished during 2011 and 2012 and now forms part of the building complex surrounding the Rocker Quad, and is inhabited by undergraduates. In 2012, Bannister carried the Olympic flame at the site of his memorable feat, in the stadium now named after him. Memorabilia. In the gallery of Pembroke College Dining Hall there is a cabinet containing over 80 exhibits covering Bannister's athletic career and including some academic highlights. St. Mary's Hospital, Imperial College School of Medicine have named a lecture theatre after Bannister, with the stopwatch used to time the race on display, stopped at 3:59. Bannister has also given his name to both the trophy presented to the winning team in the annual Imperial College School of Medicine vs Imperial College London Athletics varsity match, as well as the award giving to the graduating doctor of Imperial College School of Medicine who has achieved most in the sporting community. Honours. In 1978, he was awarded an honorary degree by the University of Sheffield. In 1984, he was awarded an honorary degree by the University of Bath. Honorary degree, University of Pavia, 1986. Honorary degree, Brunel University London, 2008. Honorary doctorate, Oxford Brookes University, 2014. He was made an honorary freeman of the London Borough of Harrow on the 4th of May 2004. He was given the Freedom of the City of Oxford in 2004. Sir Roger Bannister is an honorary fellow of his University of Oxford alma maters, Exeter College and Merton College.